Hi, I just want to come in today and say hello. I wanted to discuss choosing love over fear. And a lot of us have different things that happen in our life. We have different timelines. We have different spiritual experiences that happen to us or that you've experienced, maybe a spiritual experience that you've experienced in your life, or perhaps a near-death experience. A lot of people have had near-death experiences and they've lived to talk about it, and they can tell you the details. And I had one back in 1997. I've discussed this a little bit on other videos. Um, haven't told the whole story, but basically I had open heart surgery when I was 25, and I had what they call endocarditis, which was a bacterial infection in my heart. And I was just finishing college, and I just finished college, and I was going out in the world, and more than likely, they said that I possibly contracted the bacterial infection from having work done on my teeth a few months prior, in that same year. So I was really sick for about that full year, definitely starting August of 97. And by the time November hit, which was November 18th, I remember my brother was going on vacation with his wife and his child at the time, and I could not keep anything down. I was throwing up. I was months prior to that, and what I remember is about August, I was in and out. I was one day I'd be fine. I'm up around doing things and getting things done, and then the next thing I know, the next day I would be laid out. And I also had heart failure at the same time, which was showing in the extremities of my I believe it was my right foot. It kept on swelling up. So I really knew things were going pretty bad. I heard my heart. I could hear the beat of my heart. It was very loud. And my father, being a physician, also watched me. And he also knew something was wrong. So by November, my brother, he was on his way to drop off his child at my father's, and he ended up telling my father that I needed to go to the emergency room. And I knew that was coming because things weren't getting better. I think I was partly in denial, and so I was taken to a hospital. I was actually admitted to a hospital, a teaching hospital, and there I was for about a month. I had liver, kidney, heart failure. I had endocarditis. I had my lungs were filled with fluid, and my white blood cell count was so low that they couldn't do the surgery for until my white blood cell count went up, and that wasn't until December 2nd. And so the surgery happened, and I remember counting down from 10, and of course they put me out. And in that time frame of my surgery, I experienced a near-death experience. I remember not being able to breathe at one point, and I don't know exactly when this happened because time is very different in that realm, in that energy, that space. So I remember going through a tunnel. I remember seeing a light. I remember feeling this love. So from the point where I couldn't breathe anymore, I remember feeling like I was gasping for air, and after possibly a few seconds, maybe a minute or two, I realized that no one could hear me because I thought I was talking and saying, I can't breathe. But I remember, and this is all in thoughts, in my consciousness, that I'm going to die, and because I can't get any more air. And so at that point, I remember thinking or feeling or being embodied with the words of surrendering. And then as soon as I felt that release, basically, of surrendering to whatever it was, possibly my death, I went through this tunnel. Excuse me. I remember this darkness, this very, like, the deepest, the darkest of dark tunnels. That's how I would describe it. It felt like I was going through this tunnel, and I don't know how long it was, but eventually I came to this beautiful light, and I felt so unburdened and free and enveloped in this light that felt like love, pure, unconditional love, like being in the presence of my Creator. That's how I felt. I felt unburdened, and it was very confusing. It was very, I was in bliss, I would say. So there was a lot of things that happened during that experience, and time wasn't the same thing as we see time here in everyday life. There was no, well, I did not have a perception of time. It's almost like it didn't exist, or at least I didn't perceive time in a linear way. So so I remember seeing colors, these vibrant colors, and colors that I've never experienced before. I felt that there was this presence, possibly this presence, this high-level spiritual being. I saw several in this state of awareness, and my state of awareness was clarity, and the kind of clarity where you know that you are connected to everyone and everything. And I remember thinking or realizing, coming to a realization, excuse me, I need to get some water. Get that. And heard the words, or had that realization or the knowing that that this is all a play. And I remember feeling actually joy and happiness, and there was no sadness. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel I remember thinking I was ready to go. I was ready to go home, is what I considered home, in this state of consciousness that I was in during my near-death experience. So there's a lot of things that happened even after I was, obviously, they did the surgery, and when I came out of surgery, I remember seeing my family around me after this experience, and seeing that everything was alive and everything had energy, and the people, and I had such deep and profound love for everyone, from the nurses to the doctors. I mean, everyone, from strangers that I didn't even know, and of course my family, but it was a deeper type of love. It wasn't like a parental love. It was more than that. It was more than a sibling love. Um, it's what a lot of people term as unconditional, all-encompassing love. It's like the highest level of love that is not common in our everyday world. So that's what I came out of. And I also understood that we never die, that there is no such thing as death, and that we have nothing to fear when we eventually leave this physical world in our physical body. Our consciousness, our soul, if you will, lives on. And when you come out of that and you have that experience like I did, there is no fear, and there's nothing but pure love and bliss and that freedom. And I remember coming back, or feeling that I was back into back in my body, and I could feel the heaviness, the weight of our physical body. It just felt so heavy. The colors and that clarity and that knowingness and that all-pervasive, unconditional love. And I remember that lasted probably another, I would say another 2 weeks. It was as if the veil of forgetfulness was taken off, and I was in pure bliss, and things were radiant, and the colors that I saw were not anything like I've ever seen in my lifetime. And not even since then have I've seen colors. Even if you use filters and cameras, it doesn't compare to these colors. I also remember hearing music during this near-death experience, and it was almost like not classical music, but just beautiful, beautiful sounds that and different frequencies. So everything was alive. Everything is alive. Everything is moving all the time. There's energy. Everything's changing. So I could actually see this with my physical eyes, and I could also feel how others felt. I remember my parents coming to my hospital room after recovery, and I could feel their sadness or their worry. And I was thinking to myself, I don't think I actually spoke it to them, but like, don't be sad. It's nothing to be sad about. It's bliss, and there's nothing to worry about. And I don't remember if I conveyed that to them at that time, but I remember distinctly being very in tune with what other people felt around me. And I had such clarity, and during my near-death experience, I know it's difficult to pinpoint exactly the times these things happened in my entire experience, because again, time was not linear in this state of being when I had my experience. But I remember having conversations with these beings, and I will call it the beings of light, because there were beings that were speaking to me without words, almost like a knowing. It's almost like a telepathic communication. And I remember distinctly hearing that I wasn't going to stay. Like, this is like, I wasn't going to stay. And I thought that I was going to go home. And I remember the words, I want to go home. And I attribute that to being our spiritual home. And I talked to my doctor afterwards, and I was in the hospital for that full month, and prior to, and we were waiting those 2 weeks to have the surgery because I was that sick. I also had, besides the endocarditis, which was on the aortic valve, I had, they had to repair my mitral valve. They replaced my aortic valve with a human heart valve. I was born with a hole in my heart. So that had caused complications as well. So they were able to repair the hole in my heart that I was born with, and repair the mitral valve and replace my aortic valve. So if you're in the medical field, you probably could understand how sick I really was. And for at least that 6 months, from August up until August up until November, when I had my surgery, there was no way that that I felt that I could heal on my own. So there's a lot of emotions that went on during that time, and this was like 27 years ago for me. But afterwards, I came and had some understandings and realizations after my whole ordeal and over the years. But shortly after I had my surgery, I remember hearing that under the right conditions, my body would have healed itself. But unfortunately, I was in a situation where I needed to be hospitalized, and went through conventional medicine, and I'm so grateful for that I had the care that I received. I was very fortunate to get a human heart valve at that time. I was only 25, so because I was still at childbirthing years, the doctor wanted to put a human heart valve in, which he also let me know that at that time it was fairly, not new, but they knew it lasted anywhere from 11 to 14, 13 years, around that time, 11, 12, 13 years. So, and that way I wouldn't have to take any type of blood thinner after the surgery. So I opted for the human heart valve instead of what was available then was human heart valve, the pig valve, and the mechanical valve. And again, because of my age, they opted for, and we signed, I agreed for the human heart valve. So there's so much that I've learned from the experience of having this spiritual, I would say, awakening at that age, and it changed my life. because I've lived my life where I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of that death because I know there's no such thing as true death, that our soul, our consciousness, we are connected with this, with the universe, our creator, God, however you want to call it, but I call it God. I call because I felt that I had this beautiful, loving presence, that it was a very personal experience. It was as if God was right there with me, and that we can communicate telepathically through thought without words being spoken. So I just wanted to share my story because a lot of you possibly have had something similar, and you question, or you've tried to share your story with others and maybe no one believed you, or and that's okay because they didn't have that same experience. And now people who are having near-death experiences are coming out and sharing their stories. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of resources. Now you could go on YouTube, there's so many books written about people telling their stories of their near-death experience, and some of them are so incredible. And I found validation, and it was confirmation for me. I already knew what I experienced was real, and there's nothing that anyone could say. And I have a lot of my family members that are in the medical field, and I've shared my story with them. And again, back then no one really heard much about, and that was like the late 90s. There was a Raymond Moody book out, but again, I didn't have that book. I didn't know about that. So over the years, I searched in vain to find some resource to even talk to other people to see if they've ever had an experience, especially if they've gone through surgery, if they've gone through a car accident. Wasn't my first spiritual experience. I was in a car accident also during my college years, and I remember experiencing time slowing down. I've had prophetic dreams. I've felt very connected to the spiritual realm, and even before my near-death experience, and even before my open heart surgery. And I just want to share this with others so that they can understand that we are loved, and we are so loved by our Creator. And no matter what dramas or hardships or trials and difficulties that your life has brought you, or anything that has occurred that's traumatic, or even relationships, during that time, I had a boyfriend, or I had an ex-boyfriend, and at the dramas of being in your 20s and having a relationship, all of that was forgiven, and it was like an instantaneous forgiveness. And I understood that aside from the dramas and the disagreements that we have with people, ultimately we love everyone, and we have this veil over us that hides that fact, that cloaks the fact that we love even those who have betrayed us, that have betrayed us in our stories. So I just wanted to put that out there. I know that a lot of people who have had this experience find that when you look at the bigger scheme of things in your life, that can bring to have the understanding of how we are loved and there's unconditional love from our Creator, can help you to forgive those who really just played their part in your life in order for you to wake up. There's a lot of people that are having this awakening, and I was, by the grace of God, had this awakening when I was just 25 years old. And before that, I had prophetic dreams. I've had a lot of people that I've known pass. And I'm from a small town, so we've had a lot of tragedies in our hometown growing up, and a lot of people, and so everyone knew everyone in our town. But one of the big factors, I think, that something that impacted me tremendously in my life and in my journey of life, is when my first boyfriend in high school died tragically in a car accident. And I'm not going to talk about that. I was maybe 15 or 16 when that happened. And it was so heart-wrenching, and so it just broke my heart. And I remember my girlfriend and I, one of my girlfriends that I had known since childhood, I saw her in a hallway, and we just embraced and just sobbed together. And that was an early incident in my life that helped shape how I view the world. And it also helped me understand that even in romantic relationships, we're not ever, even though if you're married or if you've been dating someone for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, or been married for 50 years, we are never anyone's property, or that person is a soul unto itself. That person has his or her own journey. And even if you're married, everyone eventually will meet their maker, so to speak. And it's not a bad thing. It's nothing to fear. Death is nothing to fear. And this is one subject that most people don't even talk about, or maybe even give thought to. But the fact is that we talk about it, I feel, not as much as we should, because when it comes that time when we leave our physical body, you will have this review of your life. And what I found when I had my near-death experience is that our thoughts matter, the little things. And it's not necessarily, it's not the material things that you've accomplished in your life. It's not about how much money you've made, or anything material, anything in the physical world, where all of that will be left behind. What does matter is how you treat others, your thoughts and your actions. some of the smallest things. One of the biggest things that, and I'm going to close this up, but one of the biggest things that I understood was the power of prayer. And when I left the hospital and my mom gave me this stack of cards and letters, I'm talking about hundreds of letters and cards from people that I didn't even know. Some people I did. Some churches had put prayers out there for me while I was in the hospital. But I remember thinking, and it was so moving and so profound, how many people, and this was back before the internet, okay, so I know that people always pray online, or they send their good positive energy and their prayers, and we could do that by the click of of our keyboard. But back in 97, when I believe the internet was just starting, I remember seeing this pile of cards and words of encouragement and prayers for the entire time I was in the hospital, just people praying for me. So I realized that power of prayer, that we are all connected, and putting out those positive thoughts, those things matter. Things that you do, it's like a butterfly effect, right? Things that you do matters, and it can affect your specific timeline. And we have different timelines just on the thoughts. And what I mean by timelines is different potentials for your life. And I feel this lifetime and where I'm at right now is where I'm supposed to be as far as my timeline. There's never a wrong timeline or wrong potential or wrong thing about your life. There's always different roads. They say there's different paths that you can take. So sometimes it's a different path that might be a harder path. Maybe you didn't marry this person, or maybe you didn't stay with that person, or maybe you decided not to have kids instead of having kids. Maybe you decided to take this job, or move to this country, or move to this area, or not be friends and break off ties with certain people. All of those create different timelines or potentials for you. So ultimately, I want to share and spread the word of loving each other and treating people with kindness and forgiving those. Because a lot of the times, forgiving those that have hurt us, I know that's a big ask, because there's been some horrible things that people have gone through. And you know what you've gone through in your life. But if this can help you to forgive those who actually played their parts. They played their parts. Now, everyone does have free will, so it does get a little murky in that sense, where some people are at different levels of spirituality, levels of maybe they have different upbringings. They make different choices based on your experience or their experiences. So I'm hoping that this helps you understand that there really is that spiritual world that guides us and supports us, and that when we set our intentions to do good and to be good with others and not to cause chaos, and treat others as you would have them, how you would treat yourself, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. All of that comes into play, all of that is important so that you can flow with your purpose here on earth and in life. So I hope that you, there's a lot more to my story, and possibly the importance of the lessons that you get, and hopefully this helps you understand why things happen the way they do, why we go through some challenges, when we do, where we do, the importance of using our intuition as a compass to guide us to safe places, and the importance of trying to heal those childhood wounds, things that have traumatized us, or things that trigger us, to work through those emotions so we can be healthy and balanced in every aspect of our lives, individually, mind, body, spirit, emotional, spiritual, mental, physical, all of that. It all matters. And know that God has given us this perfect body, this vessel, that if given the right conditions, if you give it the right conditions, it can heal itself in certain circumstances. I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not giving medical advice, but what I'm saying is, if we treat our body, and there's such a connection with your mental state of being with your physical, keeping your stress levels down, practicing forgiveness, practicing just balancing your life and having that awareness, also in every aspect of your life. I know it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to accomplish. But remember, there is also the Christ consciousness, and we want to raise our levels of vibration, our levels of understanding, because there's many levels, and we're capable of more. And again, I will probably continue this. If you have any questions, feel free to put the comments below. Hopefully this made sense to you. If you resonate with any of this information, please like, share, subscribe. And I love you guys. I truly love you. I appreciate you listening, and open your heart. Learn to use your intuition. Come from your heart center. I'm working on it too. I'm not perfect. I have to overcome a lot of things in my life, some past hurts, possibly some forgive myself. And when you forgive yourself for things that possibly you thought that you should have known, or you should have picked up, or the signs were there, we can drop all that. We could drop that in time. Always be patient with yourself. Love yourself. And when you do, and you are totally balanced, and when you're balanced in your own life, then you can move on, to see things in other people's perspectives, to understand why people move the way they do, or possibly how they were able to maybe not be so aligned with what you deem right or wrong. And I'm not saying that you have to have that in your energy any longer. What I'm saying is it helps if you can move past your ego, because really that's what it is the ego. It's a lot with our ego and pride and our personality. Ultimately know that you are a spiritual being created by the Most High, and something that you really, there are no words to describe this all-pervasive, loving God that's everywhere. So I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you guys on the next video. Take care.